Move along, sweetheart. That seat isn't for you. The man's tone cut like glass through the hum of first class. 11-year-old Amara Jenkins froze her boarding pass, trembling in her small hand seat, 2A clearly printed. Around her whispers stirred. Some looked away. Others recorded. "Sir, she's in the right seat," the flight attendant said, voice tight. But Richard only smirked, towering over the child he believed didn't belong. None of them knew the truth that the little girl he'd just humiliated wasn't only a passenger, she was a billionaire CEO whose next move would ground his career and expose an empire built on lies. The plane jolts violently as the captain's voice cuts through the cabin with chilling finality. This aircraft is returning to the gate. Security will be boarding. 11-year-old Amara Jenkins feels every eye on the plane turn toward her. A sea of strangers suddenly united in their judgment. Tears threaten at the corners of her eyes as she stands frozen in the aisle. The boarding pass clutched in her trembling hand, clearly showing seat 2A. Her seat now occupied by the scowling middle-aged man who refuses to make eye contact with anyone but the flight attendant. "I paid for first class," he insists through clenched teeth. "And I'm not giving up my seat to accommodate some disruption." The word hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Amara's father, Marcus Jenkins, stands protectively beside his daughter, his normally composed demeanor now a barely contained storm. "My daughter's seat," he says, with deliberate calm that belies the tension in his shoulders, "was purchased weeks ago. She has the boarding pass to prove it." The flight attendant looks between them, conflict etched across her face as the ripple of whispers travels through the cabin. What no one yet realizes is that in exactly 4 minutes, this mundane dispute will escalate into a situation that changes lives forever and exposes truths that some passengers have spent lifetimes trying to hide. But to understand how we got here, how an 11-year-old black girl, who quietly built a tech empire worth billions from her bedroom, could find herself at the center of a confrontation that would soon make national headlines, we need to go back to where the day began, in the pod of the Jenkins family home. The alarm chirps softly at 4:30 a.m. Though Amara is already awake, sleep had proven elusive, as it often did before big meetings. Her bedroom looks like any other child's at first glance. Stuffed animals arranged carefully on a window seat. Science fair ribbons pinned to a corkboard, a bookshelf overflowing with dog-eared paperbacks. But the sleek computer setup in the corner tells a different story. 3 monitors display scrolling code financial projections and the latest user statistics for Dreamscape, the educational gaming platform that Amara created when she was 9, now used in schools across 47 countries. Big day, husp sparrow. Marcus Jenkins appears in the doorway. 2 steaming mugs in hand. The childhood nickname still fits her somehow. This small, quick-minded girl, whose source is higher than anyone expects, Amara accepts the hot chocolate gratefully. Nervous, she admits the Suntech investors are old school. They expect someone different. Marcus sits on the edge of her bed, his own coffee forgotten as he studies his daughter's face. At 48, he's learned to read the subtle signs of her anxiety. The way she tucks her hair behind her ears repeatedly, the slight furrow between her brows. "They expect someone who doesn't look like me," Amara clarifies, meeting her father's eyes directly. This is their unspoken understanding, the reality they navigate daily in the world of tech and finance. A black girl from Detroit isn't exactly what pops into people's heads when they hear tech billionaire. "Then today's the day their heads get rewired," Marcus says simply, a former electrical engineer who left his corporate job to support his daughter's growing company. He's learned that sometimes the most powerful thing he can do is acknowledge the truth without letting it become a barrier. You're not walking into that room to prove you belong there. You're walking in because they need what you've built. Amara nods, drawing strength from the absolute certainty in her father's voice. In the soft morning light, with her NASA pajamas and the stuffed penguin she's had since she was 3, she looks like any other kid. Few would guess that the algorithm she developed in this very room revolutionized how children with learning differences interact with educational material, or that her company's valuation had crossed the $1 billion threshold 6 months ago. "San Francisco, here we come," she says, attempting a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Something about this trip feels different, though she can't pinpoint why. As Marcus helps her pack the last of her things, neither of them can possibly know how prophetic that feeling of unease will prove to be. 2 hours later, Detroit Metropolitan Airport buzzes with early morning travelers. The Jenkins move efficiently through security, a well-practiced routine from frequent business travel. Amara's passport shows stamps from Tokyo, London, Singapore evidence of pitches, conferences and partnership meetings that have taken her around the world. Today's meeting with SoonTC Ventures could mean expanding Dreamscape's reach to underserved communities globally, a mission that makes the exhausting travel schedule worthwhile. "Dad, did you remember to pack my presentation thumb drive?" Amara asks, suddenly pausing in the middle of the terminal. Marcus pats his breast pocket with a knowing smile. "Right here, plus the backup in my carry-on, and another uploaded to the cloud. Triple redundancy, just like you taught me." This small exchange, the child reminding the parent reassuring, captures the unique dynamic between them. Their roles often shift and blend. Sometimes Marcus is the protective father. Sometimes he's the supportive executive to Amara's visionary CEO. They've learned to dance between these identities seamlessly, each filling in the gaps for the other. At the gate, Amara reviews her presentation notes while Marcus makes a phone call to their driver in San Francisco. Around them, the usual airport tableau unfolds. Business travelers hammering away on laptops. Families sing excited children. Solo travelers lost in books or podcasts. No one pays particular attention to the unassuming father-daughter pair, and that's exactly how they prefer it. Amara's company has been featured in business magazines and tech blogs, but they've carefully guarded her privacy-limiting photos and public appearances. Her innovations, not her age or appearance, are what she wants the world to focus on. Now, boarding Group A for Flight 1982 to San Francisco. The announcement crackles over the speakers. Marcus gathers their things as Amara tucks her tablet into her backpack. "Ready, Sparrow?" He asks the question layered with meaning beyond just the boarding call. Amara takes a deep breath, squares her shoulders beneath her neat blazer, custom-tailored, but still unmistakably designed for a child, and nods. Ready. They join the line, boarding passes in hand. Amara's ticket shows seat 2A, a window seat in first class. Though Marcus could easily afford first-class tickets for both of them, he's deliberately booked himself an economy 3 rows behind the divider. These small decisions are part of the careful balance they maintain, providing Amara the comfort she needs for important business trips while teaching her the value of money and privilege. "I'll be right back there if you need anything," Marcus reminds her as they reach the front of the line. "Just push the call button or text me." Amara nods, straightening her posture as she hands her boarding pass to the gate agent. There's a subtle shift in her demeanor now, a composure that settles over her like a cloak. Marcus recognizes it as her business mode, the same poised presence she brings to boardrooms and investor meetings. "Welcome aboard, Miss Jenkins," the gate agent says, scanning her pass with a warm smile that falters only slightly upon realizing the passenger's age. "Enjoy your flight to San Francisco." Amara thanks her politely and steps onto the jet bridge, unaware that the carefully controlled world she and her father have built is about to collide with forces they couldn't have anticipated. Because despite her extraordinary achievements, despite the wealth she's generated and the lives her technology has improved to, some people boarding Flight 1382 today, Amara Jenkins will never be more than what they first see. A black child in a space they've decided she doesn't belong. The first-class cabin of Flight 1382 gleams with the muted luxury of leather seats and extra legroom. Amara moves confidently towards seat 2A, her small carry-on rolling behind her. She's flown often enough to navigate the rituals of air travel with ease. Where to stow her bag, how to adjust her seat, the polite nods exchanged with flight attendants. From 3 rows back in economy, Marcus watches his daughter settle into her seat. A familiar mix of pride and anxiety stirring within him. Every time Amara steps away from his protective presence, he feels it. That catch in his throat, the silent prayer that the world will see her, as he does, brilliant, deserving, and so much more than the sum of others' expectations. The steady stream of passengers continues boarding. A distinguished-looking woman in her 60s takes the aisle seat across from Amara, offering a cordial smile that Amara returns. A young man with wireless earbuds claims the seat beside the woman, barely looking up from his phone. The atmosphere is tranquil, the usual pre-flight murmur creating a cocoon of white noise that allows Amara to review her presentation notes one final time. The calm shatters when a latecomer rushes into the first-class cabin, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and an expensive suit that shows signs of a harried morning. His face is flushed from rushing, his expression darkening as he scans the row numbers. "Excuse me?" he says, stopping at Amara's row and checking his boarding pass again. "I believe you're in my seat." Amara looks up, momentarily confused. She double-checks her own boarding pass. "Oh, this is 2A. The man, Richard Blackwell, though Amara doesn't yet know his name, looks from the child to the boarding pass. She holds out, his frown deepening. There must be some mistake. I specifically booked this seat. A flight attendant approaches, drawn by the brewing conflict. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Richard says, before Amara can respond. "I believe there's been a mix-up with the seating assignments." Amara speaks up, her voice clear, despite its softness. "My boarding pass says 2A, and that's what I booked." The flight attendant, Sandra Miles, her name tag reads, gently takes both boarding passes to examine them. Her expression betrays nothing as she confirms what Amara has already said. "Miss Jenkins is correctly seated in 2A. Sir, let me check your assignment." Richard's jaw tightens visibly. "That's impossible. I always book this seat on this route." "Check again." Sandra scans his boarding pass with practiced patience. "Mr. Blackwell, your assigned seat is actually 12C in economy plus economy." The word explodes from him with such indignation that several nearby passengers look up. "That's ridiculous. I've been a platinum member for 15 years. I never fly economy." "I understand your frustration, sir, but this has to be fixed." Richard interrupts, his voice rising. "I have an important meeting directly after landing. I need to work during this flight." Sandra maintains her professional composure. "I'd be happy to check if there are any other first-class seats available, but at the moment, it appears we're fully booked in this cabin." Richard's gaze shifts to Amara, who sits perfectly still, acutely aware of the scrutiny now directed at her from surrounding passengers. His next words come slowly, deliberately. "Surely there's some flexibility here. Perhaps the young lady wouldn't mind relocating. I doubt she needs the workspace as urgently as I do." The implication hangs in the air, unmistakable in its condescension. Sandra's smile becomes fixed. "So Miss Jenkins has a confirmed reservation for this seat. I cannot ask her to relocate. Come on." Richard lowers his voice, leaning closer to Sandra. "Be reasonable. Look at her. She's what, 10, 11? How important could her reasons for being in first class possibly be?" Amara feels heat rising to her cheeks. She's encountered this before, the dismissal, the assumptions, but it never stings any less. She considers offering to switch just to end the mounting discomfort, but her father's voice echoes in her mind. Never surrender your rightful place to make someone else comfortable with their prejudice. Before she can decide, a new voice enters the conversation. The older woman seated across the aisle. "Excuse me," she says, her tone pleasant but firm. "I couldn't help overhearing. Perhaps I might offer my seat." I meant to see the woman, elegantly dressed with silver hair swept into a neat bun, looks directly at Richard with keen grey eyes that missed nothing. That would solve the issue, wouldn't it? The young lady keeps her assigned seat, and you get to remain in first class. Richard hesitates, thrown by this unexpected intervention. "That's very kind of you, but it's no trouble." The woman continues smoothly. "Though I must say, I'm curious why you assume the child's business in San Francisco is less important than yours." There's a subtle edge to her otherwise pleasant tone. Appearances can be deceiving after all. The other first-class passengers have gone quiet, watching the drama unfold. Richard looks around, suddenly aware of how the situation appears. His expression shifts calculation, replacing outrage as he realizes the older woman has offered him a graceful exit from an increasingly awkward confrontation. "That's very generous of you," he says, finally his voice forcibly controlled. "Thank you." As the woman rises to collect her things, she introduces herself to Amara. "Elizabeth Montgomery." "Pleasure to meet you, dear Amara Jenkins." "Thank you, Miss Montgomery." Elizabeth waves away her thanks. "Not at all. I prefer the window anyway." As they rearrange themselves, Elizabeth now in economy plus Richard sullenly taking the aisle seat she vacated. Amara catches her father's concerned gaze from economy. She gives him a small nod to indicate all is well. Though the encounter has left her unsettled, she can feel Richard's resentment radiating from the seat across the aisle, sense the weight of his assumptions and judgment. What Amara doesn't know, what no one aboard Flight 1382 could possibly know, is that this minor seating dispute is merely the first domino in a chain of events that will expose long-buried secrets, challenge deep-held beliefs, and ultimately force everyone involved to confront truths about themselves they've spent years avoiding. As the final passengers board and the cabin crew prepares for departure, the real story of this flight is only beginning to unfold. The engines rumble to life as Flight 11382 begins its taxi toward the runway. Amara tucks her boarding pass into her tablet case, trying to shake off the lingering discomfort from the confrontation. Across the aisle, Richard Blackwell makes a show of spreading out his work materials pointedly, avoiding eye contact with the child. He clearly still believes has no business in first class. In economy, Marcus Jenkins keeps a watchful eye forward, his attention divided between the book in his hands and the occasional glimpse of his daughter's head, visible over the top of her seat. He'd witnessed enough of the interaction to understand its nature. Another entry in the catalogue of slights and assumptions they've encountered throughout Amara's remarkable journey. "Pardon me," a voice breaks into his thoughts. "Is that seat taken?" Marcus looks up to find Elizabeth Montgomery standing in the aisle, gesturing to the empty middle seat beside him. The same woman who had given up her first-class seat. "No, please." He shifts to make room for her. "Elizabeth Montgomery," she offers, as she settles in. "Marcus Jenkins, that was a kind thing you did up there." Elizabeth's eyes show a flash of recognition at his last name, but she simply says, "It seemed the simplest solution to an unnecessary problem." After a pause, she adds more quietly, "Some people are remarkably resistant to having their assumptions challenged." Marcus studies her with new interest. "You didn't have to give up your seat." "Perhaps not, but your daughter shouldn't have had to defend her right to occupy the space she paid for either." Elizabeth's matter-of-fact tone holds no request for gratitude or acknowledgement of sacrifice, just a statement of principle that resonates deeply with Marcus. Their conversation is interrupted by the captain's voice over the intercom welcoming passengers aboard the 3-hour flight to San Francisco. The standard announcements follow. Expected weather conditions, cruising altitude, estimated arrival time. The familiarity of the routine allows Amara to gradually relax, opening her tablet to review her presentation one last time before allowing herself to enjoy the window view during takeoff. As the plane accelerates down the runway and lifts into the sky, the sprawling expanse of Detroit falls away beneath them. Amara watches the city of her birth, with all its complexities, challenges, and fierce resilience, transform into a miniature model of itself. There's something centering about this perspective, a reminder that problems that loom large on the ground often shrink when viewed from above. In economy, Marcus and Elizabeth discover a shared interest in engineering. He in electrical systems, she in structural design. Their conversation flows easily, touching on career paths, technological innovations, and eventually the unique challenges of raising a gifted child. "She's remarkable," Elizabeth observes after Marcus shares a carefully edited version of Amara's achievements. "Though I imagine it hasn't always been an easy road," Marcus offers a measured smile. "There have been obstacles, some expected, others less so. The expected ones being the usual suspects: age, gender, race, take your pick." He keeps his voice light, but the accumulated weight of years fighting these battles shows in the tightness around his eyes. The tech world talks a big game about meritocracy, but the reality is people see what they expect to see. Elizabeth finishes for him, and they treat people accordingly. Marcus nods, struck by how precisely she's articulated it. Exactly. Sometimes, I think the hardest part of my job as her father is teaching her to navigate that reality without letting it diminish her sense of possibility. Up in first class, Amara has pulled out her sketchbook, a habit she's maintained since childhood, jotting down ideas and designs that often become the seeds of new features for Dreamscape. Her current project focuses on adapting the platform for children with visual impairments, creating sensory feedback systems that would make digital learning more accessible. Richard Blackwell, despite his determined focus on his laptop, finds his attention repeatedly drawn to the child's meticulous sketches. Professional curiosity gradually overcomes his lingering resentment as he recognizes complex circuit designs taking shape under her pencil. That's an interesting approach, he comments. Finally, his tone neutral, but interested. Haptic feedback system. Amara looks up surprised by the overture. Yes, I'm trying to design something more intuitive than what's currently available. For what application, she hesitates. Years of cautious media training making her automatically guard details of unreleased projects. But professional enthusiasm wins out. Educational technology for visually impaired students. The existing options are either prohibitively expensive or too simplistic to engage older learners. Richard's eyebrows rise slightly. This is not the answer he expected from a child her age. You're designing this yourself. It's collaborative, Amara acknowledges. I have a team of engineers who help refine the technical specifications, but the core concept and initial design are mine. The conversation might have continued, perhaps even bridged the gulf of misunderstanding between them, had the flight not hit a patch of turbulence at that exact moment. The fastened seatbelt signs illuminate with a soft chime as the plane gives a sudden lurch. Amara grips her armrests, her stoic expression betraying only a slight tension around her eyes. Richard, distracted by steadying his laptop, doesn't notice the child's discomfort, but someone else does. From the middle rows of economy comes a woman in her early 30s, moving quickly against the flight attendant's instructions to remain seated. She pushes forward into first class, her expression urgent. Amara. She calls, scanning the premium cabin until she spots the girl. Are you okay? The woman, dressed in casual business attire, her natural hair pulled back in a professional bun, stops beside Amara's seat, ignoring the flight attendant who follows close behind. Deep breaths, remember, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Amara nods gratefully, following the familiar breathing pattern, while the woman places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat immediately, Sandra insists. We're experiencing turbulence. Just give me a minute. The woman responds without looking away from Amara. She has anxiety during turbulence. Are you? Her mother Sandra asks, confusion evident in her voice as she looks between them. No, I'm her chief operating officer, the woman replies matter-of-factly. Zoe Washington. I work for her. This statement, delivered without fanfare but with unmistakable seriousness, causes a ripple of reaction through the first-class cabin. Richard Blackwell's head snaps up his expression, cycling rapidly through disbelief, confusion, and dawning comprehension. Works for her. He repeats, looking at Amara with new eyes. What exactly do you... His question is cut short by another bout of turbulence more severe than the first. The plane drops suddenly, then steadies, but the momentary plunge is enough to send Zoe stumbling against the bulkhead. That's it, Sandra says firmly. Everyone needs to be in their assigned seats with seatbelts fastened now. Zoe gives Amara's hand a final squeeze. You good, Amara, nods, her breathing steadier. I'm good. Thanks, Zoe. As Zoe makes her way back to economy, the pieces start falling into place for Richard and the other first-class passengers who overheard the exchange. Whispered questions bounce between seats. Did she say she works for the kid chief operating officer? Who is this girl? Richard pulls out his phone despite the flight restrictions, opening his browser to search for Amara Jenkins before remembering he has no internet access. His expression has transformed completely. The dismissive annoyance replaced by intense curiosity and a dawning recognition that he may have seriously misjudged the situation. Meanwhile, in economy, Marcus has been watching the interaction with concern. Elizabeth notices his tension. "Your daughter doesn't like flying," she asks gently. "Just the turbulence," he explains. "She's fine otherwise. Her COO usually travels with us for important meetings. She's good at helping Amara through the rough patches." Elizabeth processes this new information with a slight widening of her eyes, the only indication of her surprise. "I see." Before they can continue, the captain's voice returns over the intercom, more serious than before. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected weather conditions. For your safety, we'll be diverting our route slightly to avoid the worst of the turbulence. Our flight time may be extended by approximately 20 minutes. Please remain in your seats with your seat belts fastened until we've cleared this weather system." A collective groan rises from the passengers, quickly silenced by another jarring bump that sends a drink cart rattling in the galley. As the plane banks into its new course, no one aboard realizes that this minor weather delay is about to become the least of their concerns. Because 30,000 FT below at San Francisco International Airport security personnel are just receiving an alert that will change the trajectory of Flight 1382 in ways no one could anticipate. And the catalyst for this alert can be traced directly back to the seating dispute that had seemed so trivial just minutes earlier. The turbulence gradually subsides as Flight 1382 adjusts its course, leaving behind a cabin full of relieved passengers. Amara's breathing has returned to normal, her momentary anxiety replaced by mild embarrassment at having been the center of attention. She chances a glance across the aisle at Richard Blackwell, who now regards her with undisguised curiosity. So he begins closing his laptop to give her his full attention. "You're that Amara Jenkins." She tilts her head slightly. "I wasn't aware there were others." The unexpected touch of dry humor catches Richard off guard, eliciting a short laugh despite himself. "Dreamscape Right, the educational platform." Amara nods, neither confirming nor denying her natural caution with strangers still in place. "My nephew uses it," Richard continues. "He has dyslexia. Your program has been well transformative for him, to be honest." Something in his tone, a genuine warmth that wasn't there before, causes Amara to relax slightly. "I'm glad it's helping him. He went from hating school to looking forward to it. That's no small thing." Richard pauses clearly, wrestling with himself before adding, "I owe you an apology. I made assumptions that were unfair." Before Amara can respond, a flight attendant, not Sandra, but a younger man named Michael, approaches with a tablet in hand. His expression professionally neutral, but with an underlying tension that immediately puts Amara on alert. "Miss Jenkins," he confirms quietly. "The captain would like to speak with you." A flutter of alarm passes through her with me. Why he didn't specify, "Ma'am, if you'll just follow me to the cockpit." Richard's eyebrows shoot up. "Is something wrong?" Michael maintains his composed expression. "Nothing to be concerned about, sir. Routine matter, but there's nothing routine about summoning a passenger to the cockpit mid-flight, and everyone involved knows it." Amara rises slowly, her mind racing through possibilities. Has something happened to her mother back in Detroit? Is there a problem with their connecting transportation in San Francisco? "Should I get my dad?" she asks, glancing back toward economy. "The captain asked for you specifically," Michael replies, already moving toward the front of the aircraft. "This way, please." As Amara follows him, she catches sight of her father, alert and watching. She gives him a small shrug to indicate her confusion, and he immediately unbuckles his seatbelt to follow. At the cockpit door, Michael knocks in a specific pattern before it opens to reveal Captain James Sullivan, a veteran pilot in his late 50s, with a weathered face and steady demeanor of someone who has navigated countless challenging situations. "Miss Jenkins." He greets her with a formal nod. "Thank you for coming up. I apologize for the unusual request." Behind her, Marcus arrives, slightly breathless. "What's going on? Why do you need to speak with my daughter?" Captain Sullivan takes in the protective father with a measuring glance. "Mr. Jenkins, I presume?" "Good. I'm glad you're here too. Please step inside for a moment. First Officer Chen will continue monitoring our systems. The cockpit is compact but state-of-the-art glowing displays and instrumentation surrounding the pilot and co-pilot seats. First Officer Chen, a woman in her 40s with calm, efficient movements, acknowledges them with a brief nod before returning her attention to the controls. Captain Sullivan closes the door behind them, ensuring their privacy from the rest of the passengers. I've just received a rather unusual communication from ground security at SFO. He begins without preamble. It seems someone has called in a security concern specifically regarding you, Miss Jenkins. Amara blinks in confusion. What kind of security concern? The caller claimed. You are traveling under false pretenses and using fraudulent identification. The captain's tone remains neutral, but his eyes are sharp, assessing their reactions. Marcus stiffens. That's absurd. My daughter's documentation is completely legitimate. I understand this may be upsetting, Captain Sullivan continues, but I'm required to take all security alerts seriously, even ones that seem improbable. He turns to Amara directly. Can you tell me the purpose of your visit to San Francisco business meeting? She answers promptly. With NC Ventures, they're considering a major investment in my company. Your company? The captain repeats his expression betraying nothing. And that would be Dreamscape Educational Technologies, Marcus interjects. My daughter is the founder and CEO. She's presenting to their board this afternoon. Captain Sullivan absorbs this information, his gaze moving between father and daughter. I see. And you have documentation confirming your identity in this meeting. Amara reaches for her tablet. I have my passport, the meeting confirmation emails and presentation materials. Also, my chief operating officer is on board Zoe Washington in economy. She can verify everything. The captain accepts the passport first, examining it carefully, before returning it with a slight nod. This appears to be in order. However, the security alert was quite specific. The caller alleged that Mr. Jenkins here is using his daughter as a front for questionable business activities. Marcus's expression darkens. That's not just false, it's offensive. Who made this claim? The call was anonymous, Captain Sullivan replies. But it was placed approximately 20 minutes ago, shortly after we took off. The timing registers immediately for both Amara and Marcus. 20 minutes ago, exactly when the seating dispute in first class had occurred. It was him, Amara says quietly. Mr. Blackwell, the man who wanted my seat. Captain Sullivan neither confirms nor denies this, maintaining his professional demeanor. I can't speculate on the source. What I can tell you is that we now have a situation that requires resolution before we can land in San Francisco. Security protocols mandate that we investigate any credible threat. This isn't credible. Marcus argues, his voice tight with controlled anger. This is harassment, plain and simple. Nevertheless, the captain continues. I've been instructed to divert to Oakland, where security personnel will board to verify identities and documentation. The implications hit Amara like a physical blow, but our meeting will miss it. I'm sorry, Miss Jenkins. Once a security protocol is activated, I have no authority to override it. Marcus places a steadying hand on his daughter's shoulder. This is racial profiling, he says quietly but firmly. You must see that. Captain Sullivan meets his gaze directly. What I see, Mr. Jenkins, is a situation I am required to handle according to procedure. My personal opinions aren't relevant here. First Officer Chen speaks up for the first time, her attention still on her instruments. Captain Oakland approaches, asking for our confirmation of the diversion. Sullivan nods. Tell them we're proceeding as directed. He turns back to the Jenkins. I'll make an announcement to the passengers momentarily. In the meantime, I suggest you gather any documentation that might expedite the verification process once we land. As they exit the cockpit, the reality of what's happening begins to sink in for Amara. Years of careful work building her company. Months of preparation for this specific meeting with investors who could help bring Dreamscape to underserved communities globally. All potentially derailed because one man couldn't accept that a black child belonged in first class. The injustice of it burns in her throat as she returns to her seat, where Richard Blackwell watches her approach with renewed interest. Everything all right? He asks, seemingly genuinely concerned. Before she can answer, the captain's voice comes over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sullivan. Due to a security matter that requires attention, we will be diverting to Oakland International Airport. Upon landing, security personnel will board the aircraft to address this situation. We ask for your patience and cooperation during this process." Flight attendants prepare the cabin for arrival. A wave of confused murmurs sweeps through the plane. Richard's expression shifts from curiosity to alarm as he processes the announcement. "Security matter. What's happening?" Amara meets his gaze directly, her young face suddenly showing a maturity beyond her years. "Someone called in a false security alert about me. They claimed I'm traveling under fraudulent identification." The color drains from Richard's face. Who would do that? Amara doesn't answer, but her steady gaze speaks volumes. Behind her, Marcus has returned to his seat in economy, where he's explaining the situation in hushes to Elizabeth Montgomery and Zoe Washington. The news spreads quickly through the cabin. Whispered speculations, worried glances, passengers checking their watches and calculating how this delay will impact their plans. As the plane begins its descent toward Oakland, the full consequences of this chain of events have yet to unfold. What began as a petty seating dispute has escalated into a security incident that will force confrontations with prejudice, privilege, and power that no one aboard Flight 1382 could have anticipated when they boarded in Detroit just hours ago. And for Amara Jenkins, child prodigy tech innovator, and now the center of a controversy not of her making the real test of her resilience, is only just beginning. The plane jolts violently as the captain's voice cuts through the cabin with chilling finality. This aircraft is returning to the gate. Security will be boarding. 11-year-old Amara Jenkins feels every eye on the plane turned toward her. A sea of strangers suddenly united in their judgment. Tears threaten at the corners of her eyes as she stands frozen in the aisle. The boarding pass, clutched in her trembling hand, clearly showing seat 2A. Her seat now occupied by the scowling middle-aged man who refuses to make eye contact with anyone but the flight attendant. "I paid for first class," Richard Blackwell insists through clenched teeth, "and I'm not giving up my seat to accommodate some disruption." The word hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Amara's father, Marcus Jenkins, stands protectively beside his daughter. His normally composed demeanor now a barely contained storm. "My daughter's seat," he says with deliberate calm that belies the tension in his shoulders, "was purchased weeks ago. She has the boarding pass to prove it." The flight attendant looks between them, conflict etched across her face, as the ripple of whispers travels through the cabin. In this moment of heightened tension, with all eyes on the confrontation unfolding in first class, no one notices the subtle shift in Elizabeth Montgomery's expression as she watches from several rows back. A calculation, a decision forming behind her carefully neutral facade. No one sees Zoe Washington's hand tighten around her phone thumb poised over a contact labeled emergency protocol. And no one, least of all Richard Blackwell himself, realizes that his impulsive phone call during the turbulence has set in motion events that will expose secrets far more damaging than a simple case of prejudice. As Flight 1382 begins its approach to Oakland International Airport, the atmosphere in the cabin has transformed. What began as a routine morning flight now crackles with tension. Passengers whisper among themselves, casting furtive glances toward Amara, whose straight-backed posture and composed expression reveal nothing of the turmoil within. In economy class, Marcus speaks urgently with Zoe. "Call Diane," he instructs, referring to their company's legal counsel. "Tell her what's happening and have her contact someone at the Oakland field office. We need to get ahead of this." Zoe nods already, typing on her phone, despite the restrictions on electronic devices. As Dreamscape COO, she's accustomed to handling crises, though usually of the technical or financial variety, not this personal attack on the company's young founder. Beside them, Elizabeth Montgomery listens quietly, her keen eyes missing nothing. "You believe this is deliberate?" she observes. Not a question, but a statement. Marcus glances at her, weighing how much to share with this stranger who has already shown unexpected kindness. It would be quite a coincidence otherwise. Indeed. Elizabeth's voice holds a note of something Marcus can't quite identify. Not quite anger, not quite resignation, but a complex blend of both. History has a way of repeating itself when we fail to acknowledge its patterns. Before Marcus can respond, the captain's voice returns. Flight attendants prepare for landing. The descent into Oakland is smooth, despite the circumstances. The plane touching down with barely a bump before taxiing toward a remote area of the airport away from the main terminals. Through her window, Amara can see several official vehicles waiting. Airport security police, even what appears to be an FBI agent in a dark suit. This is insane. Richard mutters from across the aisle, watching the same scene unfold. All this for a simple verification check. Amara turns to him, her voice low, but clear. There's nothing simple about it when you're the one being questioned. Richard shifts uncomfortably, avoiding her direct gaze. The transformation in his demeanor since learning of her identity has been remarkable, from dismissive condescension to awkward contrition. But Amara finds no satisfaction in this change. She's seen it too many times before. The sudden respect that comes only after her achievements are made known, as if her humanity alone weren't enough to warrant basic courtesy. The plane comes to a complete stop, and Captain Sullivan's voice addresses them one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at Oakland International Airport. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened until security personnel have completed their procedures. I appreciate your continued patience and cooperation. The main cabin door opens, and 3 individuals board 2 airport security officers and the FBI agent Amara had spotted from the window. They confer briefly with Sandra and Michael before Sandra approaches Amara's seat. "Miss Jenkins," she says quietly, "the officers would like to speak with you and your father." "If you'll come with me, please." Amara rises with the dignity that has become her armor in difficult situations. As she moves toward the front of the plane, Marcus joins her from economy, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. Together, they follow Sandra to the galley area where the officers wait. The FBI agent steps forward. "Miss Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins, I'm Special Agent Tanya Rodriguez. I understand there's been a security concern regarding your identities and travel purposes." Marcus speaks first, his tone respectful but firm. "A concern based on a false report. Agent Rodriguez, my daughter, is traveling to San Francisco for a legitimate business meeting. We have all necessary documentation to verify our identities and purpose." Agent Rodriguez nods, her expression professional, but not unkind. "I understand this is disruptive, sir. The sooner we can verify everything, the sooner we can resolve the situation." As Amara and Marcus present their passports, meeting confirmations, and company documentation, the rest of the passengers watch with varying degrees of interest and impatience. For most, this is merely an inconvenient delay. For a few, it's an uncomfortable reminder of the disparities in how people are treated based on appearance alone. Richard Blackwell sits rigidly in his seat, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead as he observes the investigation he himself set in motion. What had seemed a justified response to a perceived slight now looks increasingly like a massive error in judgment, one with potential repercussions beyond this flight. "You did this," a voice says softly from beside him. Richard turns to find Elizabeth Montgomery has moved to the vacant seat next to his, her grey eyes holding his with unsettling intensity. "I don't know what you're talking about," he responds automatically, though his voice lacks conviction. Elizabeth's smile is thin and knowing. "Let me refresh your memory. 20 minutes into the flight, right after discovering who Amara Jenkins actually is, you excused yourself to use the lavatory, but instead of heading toward the restrooms, you made a call. A security tip, perhaps." Richard's face pales. "How could you possibly? I observe, Mr. Blackwell, a habit from my former profession." She leans closer, her voice dropping further. "What I'm curious about is why. Was it simple spite because she wouldn't give up her seat, or something deeper? Something about seeing a young black girl in a position of power that you found threatening?" Richard recoils as if slapped. "That's absurd. I'm not. I would never save it." Elizabeth cuts him off. "What interests me now is what you plan to do about the situation you've created. Before Richard can respond, a commotion at the front of the plane draws their attention. Agent Rodriguez is speaking into her radio, her expression serious as she receives information that clearly changes the dynamics of the situation. Beside her, Amara and Marcus exchange puzzled glances. "What's happening now?" Amara asks, sensing the shift in energy. Agent Rodriguez puts away her radio regarding the Jenkins with new interest. It seems there's been a development. The security alert included specific allegations about financial irregularities at Dreamscape Technologies. Given the nature of these claims, this has become a matter for our white-collar crime division. Marcus stiffens. "That's completely false. Our company's finances are transparent and above board." Nevertheless, Agent Rodriguez continues. "I've been instructed to escort both of you to our field office for further questioning." The implication hits Amara with stunning force. This is no longer just about verifying their identities. Someone is deliberately trying to discredit her company, using this security alert as a vehicle for a much more damaging accusation. Our legal counsel is already en route. Marcus states his voice level, despite the anger building beneath the surface, will cooperate fully. But I want it on record that these allegations are baseless, and I believe maliciously motivated. As Agent Rodriguez begins making arrangements for their escort from the plane, Zoe Washington pushes forward from economy. "I'm coming too," she states, not a request, but a declaration. "As Chief Operating Officer of Dreamscape, I should be present for any questions regarding company operations." The agent considers this briefly before nodding. "That's acceptable." The whispers among passengers have grown louder. Speculation running rampant. Richard Blackwell sits frozen in his seat. The full weight of what he's inadvertently set in motion finally hitting him. This has escalated far beyond what he intended, beyond what he could have imagined when he made that impulsive call. Elizabeth studies him with a mixture of disgust and something almost like pity. "Well, Mr. Blackwell," she says quietly, "it appears your actions have had rather more significant consequences than you anticipated." As Amara, Marcus and Zoe gather their belongings to disembark, Captain Sullivan emerges from the cockpit to address the remaining passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been informed that we'll be continuing to San Francisco shortly. Those of you with connecting flights will be rebooked as necessary. We apologize for the inconvenience, and thank you for your patience." A collective sigh of relief passes through the cabin, all except for Richard, who watches with growing horror as Amara is escorted from the plane. The child's face is a mask of composure, but as she passes his seat, she pauses momentarily, her dark eyes meeting his. "I hope your meeting goes well, Mr. Blackwell," she says softly. No accusation in her tone, just a simple statement that somehow cuts deeper than any reproach could have. And then, she's gone, leaving Richard to face not only the curious stares of fellow passengers, but the much more devastating confrontation with his own conscience. What none of them realized, not Amara, not Marcus, not Richard, and not even the observant Elizabeth Montgomery, is that the most shocking revelations of this day are still to come. Because when the Jenkins family's attorney arrives at the FBI field office, she'll bring information that connects this incident to a much larger pattern. One that will trace back to power players in the tech industry who have been working behind the scenes to discredit and derail Dreamscape for reasons that have nothing to do with prejudice and everything to do with profit. The stage is now set for a confrontation that will test not just Amara's resilience, but the very foundations of justice in a system that too often favors power over truth. The Oakland FBI field office hums with efficient activity, a stark contrast to the charged emotional atmosphere surrounding Amara, Marcus and Zoe. As they're escorted through security checkpoints, Agent Rodriguez leads them to a conference room, rather than an interrogation room. A small courtesy that Marcus notes with grim appreciation. "Please make yourselves comfortable," she says, gesturing to the chairs around a polished table. "I'll need to gather some additional materials before we continue." As soon as the door closes behind her, Zoe turns to Marcus. "Diane's 20 minutes out. She's bringing the full financial audit from last quarter and has already contacted the SUNTC board to explain the situation." Marcus nods his attention on Amara, who sits unnaturally still, her usual animation replaced by a guarded watchfulness. "You doing okay, Sparrow?" he asks gently. She meets his eyes. "I'm fine." The words are steady, but Marcus recognizes the slight tremor in her hands as she arranges her tablet and documents on the table. The same tremor she gets before major presentations or difficult meetings. Not fear exactly, but the physical manifestation of her mind working overtime, processing scenarios, calculating responses. "Remember what we always say," he reminds her softly. "We can only control our own actions and reactions." She finishes, "I know, Dad." A ghost of a smile touches her lips before fading. "But this is different. This isn't just about me now. It's about Dreamscape, about everything we've built." Zoe reaches across the table to squeeze Amara's hand. "And we've built it solid. Whatever they throw at us, the foundation holds." The door opens again, and Agent Rodriguez returns with a colleague, an older man with salt and pepper hair, and the weathered face of someone who's seen too many cases end badly. This is Special Agent Donovan from our Financial Crimes Division. She introduces him. He'll be leading this portion of the investigation. Agent Donovan takes a seat across from them, placing a thick folder on the table. "I understand your attorney is en route." He begins without preamble. "We can wait if you prefer, but in the interest of resolving this quickly, we could start with some basic questions." Marcus exchanges glances with Zoe before nodding. "We have nothing to hide. Ask your questions." "Very well." Donovan opens the folder. "The alert we received contains specific allegations regarding financial improprieties at Dreamscape Technologies, particularly concerning the movement of funds between several offshore accounts and the company's main operating accounts. Can you explain the purpose of these international transactions?" The question is precise enough to confirm Marcus's suspicion. This isn't a random accusation, but a targeted attack from someone with inside knowledge of their operations. Those transactions, he explains evenly, are part of our global education initiative. We partner with schools in developing countries to provide our platform at subsidized rates. The accounts you're referring to handle the currency conversions and local disbursements necessary for those programs. Agent Donovan makes a note. "These programs are fully documented extensively." Zoe interjects. "Every transaction is tracked, audited and reported in our quarterly SEC filings. We maintain transparency as a core corporate value." The questioning continues along these lines. Detailed inquiries about specific financial operations that reveal whoever made the allegations has access to information not readily available to the public. Throughout, Amara remains mostly silent, listening intently, but speaking only when directly addressed. Her youth makes her presence in this federal investigation all the more striking. A child CEO defending her company against accusations that could destroy everything she's built. 40 minutes into the questioning, the door opens again, and a woman strides in with purposeful energy. Diane Chen, Dreamscape's chief legal counsel, impeccably dressed and radiating controlled ferocity. "I apologize for the delay," she says, placing her briefcase on the table. "I'm Diane Chen, representing Dreamscape Technologies and the Jenkins family. I'd like a moment with my clients before we proceed further." Agent Donovan nods. "Of course, we'll step out briefly." Once the agents leave, Diane turns to the group, her expression grave. "This is worse than we thought. The allegations aren't random. They're too specific to informed. Someone with access to our financial structures is behind this." "An insider?" Zoe asks, alarmed. "Possibly. Or someone who's hacked our systems." Diane pulls out her tablet. "But that's not all. I did some digging on the flight here. This isn't an isolated incident." She turns the screen toward them, showing a series of news articles and financial reports. 3 other minority-founded tech startups have faced similar allegations in the past 6 months, all just before major funding rounds or expansion announcements. All were temporarily derailed by investigations that ultimately found no wrongdoing. Marcus leans forward, scanning the information with growing concern. "You think we're being targeted as part of a pattern? I know we are," Diane confirms. "And I think I know why. Teshore Ventures." The name sends a chill through the room. Techor, one of the largest technology investment firms in the country, known for aggressive acquisition strategies and ruthless competitive tactics. They approached us last year, Amara recalls quietly. Wanted to buy Dreamscape for about a third of its value, Marcus adds. We declined. Diane nods grimly. All the companies targeted had one thing in common. They'd refused buyout offers from Techor or its subsidiaries. Shortly after, they all faced anonymous accusations that triggered federal investigations. Zoe curses under her breath. So this isn't just about Blackwell and his prejudice. He was just the convenient trigger. He made the call, Diane confirms, but the specific financial allegations came from somewhere else. Someone was waiting for an opportunity, and he handed it to them. Amara has been quiet, absorbing this information with the focused intensity that those who know her recognize as her problem-solving mode. We need proof, she says finally. Not just patterns, but concrete evidence connecting Techor to these false allegations. Diane's expression softens slightly as she looks at the young CEO. That's exactly what I've been working on, and I think we might have a lead. She pulls up another document on her tablet. One of Techcor's senior VPs was on your flight today. The revelation lands like a thunderbolt. Marcus straightens in his chair. Who Elizabeth Montgomery? The name hangs in the air for a long moment as they process this information. Elizabeth, the older woman who had given up her first-class seat, who had sat beside Marcus in economy, engaging him in seemingly friendly conversation. The woman who had observed everything with those keen grey eyes, missing nothing. She never mentioned Marcus Begins, then stops realizing the naivety of his assumption that she would have identified herself. Of course she didn't. Diane says, but here's where it gets interesting. According to my sources, Elizabeth Montgomery submitted her resignation to Techor yesterday. Effective immediately. No explanation given. The implication is clear but confusing. If Montgomery was part of Tecor's scheme, why resign just before it came to fruition? And if she wasn't involved, what did her presence on the flight mean? Before they can explore this further, the agents return. Diane immediately shifts into professional mode, presenting the documentation she's brought and skillfully redirecting the questioning to focus on the pattern of targeted accusations against minority-founded tech companies. What you're suggesting, Agent Donovan says, after reviewing the materials, would constitute corporate espionage and potential securities fraud. Those are serious allegations, no more serious than the ones leveled against my clients, Diane counters smoothly. The difference is, I've provided substantial evidence supporting our claims. The dynamic in the room has shifted subtly but significantly. What began as an investigation of Dreamscape has transformed into something more complex, a potential investigation into Techcor's practices and the systematic targeting of minority-owned businesses. As the agents confer quietly in the corner, Amara watches them with a clarity beyond her years. She understands now that what happened on Flight 1382 was never really about a seating dispute or even about Richard Blackwell's prejudice. Those were merely the visible symptoms of a much deeper, more insidious problem, the lengths to which powerful interests will go to maintain control of industries they consider their exclusive domain. What she doesn't yet know is that back on the plane now landing in San Francisco, Elizabeth Montgomery is making a phone call that will upend everyone's assumptions about who is truly pulling the strings in this elaborate corporate chess game. Flight 1982 touches down at San Francisco International Airport nearly 2 hours behind schedule. As passengers prepare to disembark, Richard Blackwell remains seated unmoving, even as others retrieve their belongings from overhead bins. The reality of what he set in motion weighs on him like a physical presence. The accusations, the FBI involvement, the public spectacle of Amara Jenkins being escorted from the plane. Sir Sandra approaches his seat. We've arrived in San Francisco. You can deplane now. Richard looks up, his expression haunted. I made a mistake, he says, not to Sandra specifically, but as if needing to voice the realization aloud. A terrible mistake. Sandra regards him with professional neutrality. Your belongings, sir? He collects his things mechanically, moving through the motions without really seeing what he's doing. As he steps into the aisle, he notices Elizabeth Montgomery waiting near the exit, speaking quietly into her phone. Something about her posture, alert, authoritative, catches his attention. This isn't the same pleasant older woman who gave up her seat. There's a steel in her bearing that he hadn't noticed before. Their eyes meet briefly as he approaches the exit. Elizabeth ends her call, studying him with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Blackwell," she acknowledges with a slight nod. "Miss Montgomery." He hesitates, then asks, "Do you think they'll be all right, the Jenkins?" Elizabeth's smile is enigmatic. "I believe they're more capable than most people give them credit for." After a pause, she adds, "Though I wonder if you'll be all right once the full story comes to light." Before Richard can respond, she's gone, moving swiftly through the jet bridge toward the terminal. Her cryptic words follow him as he makes his way to baggage claim, adding to his growing sense that there are dimensions to this situation he doesn't yet comprehend. At the Oakland FBI field office, the atmosphere has shifted dramatically. Agent Donovan returns to the conference room with Agent Rodriguez and a third individual, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, introduced as Assistant Director Keller. Miss Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins Keller, addresses them directly. "After reviewing the documentation provided by your counsel and conducting some preliminary verification, we believe your company may indeed have been targeted as part of a larger pattern of corporate malfeasance." Marcus maintains his composure, though relief flickers briefly in his eyes. "What happens now?" "We'll be expanding our investigation to include these potential corporate espionage elements," Keller explains. "The meantime, you're free to go, though we may need to contact you for additional information as we proceed." Diane gathers their materials efficiently. "My clients will cooperate fully, of course, and I trust the Bureau will investigate these systematic attacks on minority-founded businesses with the same vigor it applied to investigating Dreamscape." Keller meets her gaze directly. "We follow the evidence. Ms. Chen, wherever it leads." As they prepare to leave, Agent Rodriguez pulls Marcus aside, briefly. "For what it's worth," she says quietly. "I'm sorry for the disruption to your day, especially for your daughter." Marcus nods, appreciating the human acknowledgement behind the professional exterior. "Thank you." Outside the field office, a bureau car waits to transport them to San Francisco. As they settle into the vehicle, Amara finally allows herself to relax slightly, the rigid control she's maintained throughout the ordeal beginning to ease. "We've missed the meeting," she says, checking the time on her tablet. "Son's board won't wait." Zoe shakes her head, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Actually, they will. I got a text while we were wrapping up in there. They've rescheduled for tomorrow morning." Amara looks up, surprised. "Why would they do that?" "Because Diane explains Elizabeth Montgomery called them. Apparently, she's joining their board of directors effective immediately, and she specifically requested they accommodate your situation." The revelation stuns them all into momentary silence. Elizabeth Montgomery, TechCorps VP until yesterday, witnessed to everything that happened on Flight 1982, now suddenly on NTC's board. "I don't understand," Marcus says finally. Whose side is she on? Diane's phone chimes with an incoming message. She reads it, her eyebrows rising slightly. "According to this, she's on ours." She's just sent documentation to the FBI confirming TechCorps' systematic targeting of minority-founded tech companies, including internal memos, emails, and financial records. She's a whistleblower. Amara realizes the pieces falling into place. That's why she resigned from TechCorps. She was gathering evidence, and that's why she was on our flight, Marcus adds, remembering their conversation in economy. She wasn't just making small talk. She was verifying what she already suspected about Dreamscape being the next target. Zoe shakes her head in disbelief. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. "I don't think it was coincidence," Amara says thoughtfully. "I think she's been watching all of this unfold for months, building her case, waiting for the right moment to act." As they drive towards San Francisco, the landscape of the Bay Area spreading out before them, the full complexity of what they've experienced begins to sink in. What started as a simple seating dispute had revealed layers of prejudice, corporate corruption, and systemic targeting of minority entrepreneurs, but also unexpected allies and the power of standing firm in the face of injustice. For Amara, the day's events have reinforced what she's always known, that her path as a young black female CEO would never be straightforward, that obstacles would arise from directions she couldn't anticipate, but that persistence and integrity ultimately matter more than the barriers others try to place in her way. What she doesn't yet know is that the most revealing confrontation is still to come. Because Richard Blackwell, consumed by guilt and a desperate need to make amends, is waiting at their hotel in San Francisco, with revelations that will connect the final dots in this elaborate web of corporate manipulation and personal prejudice. The St. Regis San Francisco welcomes the Jenkins party with the discreet efficiency that characterizes luxury accommodations. As they check in the front desk, manager informs them that a Mr. Richard Blackwell has been waiting in the lobby for the past hour, requesting to speak with them. Richard Blackwell. Marcus repeats exchanging glances with Zoe and Diane from the flight. Yes, sir. The manager confirms he was quite insistent, though I assured him we couldn't confirm whether you were staying with us or not. Marcus's expression hardens. Tell him. I'll see him. Amara interrupts quietly. When the adults turn to her in surprise, she adds, I want to hear what he has to say. After a brief discussion, they agree to meet Blackwell in a private conference room rather than their suite. Amara freshens up quickly, changing from her travel clothes into a simple but professional outfit, dark jeans, a crisp white button-down, and the custom blazer that has become something of a signature look for her public appearances. You don't have to do this, Marcus reminds her as they head downstairs. Not after everything that's happened today. Amara straightens her shoulders. I know, but I think it's important. Richard Blackwell rises when they enter the conference room, his normally confident demeanor replaced by visible discomfort. He looks as if he hasn't slept in days, though it's been only hours since the flight. Miss Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins, he begins, awkwardly. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to right now. You called in a false security alert that led to my daughter being questioned by the FBI. Marcus states flatly. So, yes, this wouldn't have been my first choice of evening activities. Richard winces at the directness, but doesn't deny it. I did, and there's no excuse for my behavior. None. He takes a deep breath. But there's something you should know. Something that doesn't justify what I did, but might help explain the larger situation you found yourselves in. Diane steps forward. Mr. Blackwell, as Dreamscape's counsel, I should advise you that anything you say here could potentially be used in legal proceedings. I understand, he nods, and I accept whatever consequences come my way. But this is bigger than me, or my prejudice. He practically spits the last word, as if finally acknowledging the ugly truth he's been avoiding. Go on, Amara says, her young voice, somehow the most authoritative in the room. Richard reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a folder. I work for Next Gen Educational Systems. We're a direct competitor to Dreamscape, though our products aren't nearly as innovative or effective as yours. This admission clearly costs him. But he continues. 3 months ago, TechCore Ventures acquired a controlling interest in Next Gen. Almost immediately, the culture changed. There was a new focus on aggressive market strategies and eliminating obstacles to growth. He slides the folder across the table. 2 weeks ago, I was brought into a strategy meeting with senior management. They outlined a plan to discredit several competing educational technology companies with Dreamscape at the top of the list. The plan included everything from spreading rumors about financial irregularities to questioning the authenticity of your role as CEO. Marcus opens the folder, scanning its contents with growing anger. You were planning this all along. Me personally, Richard clarifies, though the distinction offers little comfort. I wasn't part of the planning team, but I was aware of it, and when I saw you on the flight today, he trails off the implication clear. You saw an opportunity. Amara finishes for him, her voice steady despite the hurt beneath it. You decided to help implement their plan. Richard nods miserably. I told myself it was just business, that I was protecting my company's interests. But the truth is, he finally meets Amara's eyes directly. The truth is, when I saw you in that first-class seat, something in me couldn't accept it. not because of anything you did, but because of what you represent. Success achieved in ways that challenge everything I've been taught about how the world works and who gets to succeed in it. The brutal honesty of this admission silences the room. For all the corporate machinations and economic motivations underlying the day's events, this simple truth stands starkly revealed. The personal prejudice that made Richard a willing participant in a larger scheme. What changed? Diane asks finally. Why are you telling us this now? Richard's expression shifts. A complex mixture of shame and resolve. Watching you being escorted off that plane, seeing the dignity with which you handled a situation that I created out of spite and bias. He shakes his head, and then, after we landed, I received a call from our CEO. He was furious, not because I'd done something unethical, but because it hadn't worked, because Elizabeth Montgomery had apparently blown the whistle on the entire operation. So this is damage control, Zoe suggests, skeptically trying to get ahead of the story before it breaks. No, Richard insists. This is me trying, however inadequately, to right a wrong. Documents in that folder prove NextGen's involvement in the conspiracy against Dreamscape and the other targeted companies. Emails, meeting minutes, strategy documents, everything you need to corroborate what Elizabeth Montgomery has already reported to the authorities. Marcus examines the materials more carefully. This could be useful to the FBI investigation. That's the idea Richard acknowledges. I've already contacted Agent Rodriguez to arrange a formal statement tomorrow morning. He turns back to Amara. None of this excuses what I did. The corporate conspiracy created the conditions, but my own prejudice made me a willing participant. I can only say that I'm sorry and that I'll do everything in my power to make amends, starting with providing evidence against the company I work for. Amara studies him with the thoughtful intensity that has become her hallmark. Why did you really give up your seat to Ms. Montgomery on the plane? Was it because she offered, or because you wanted to distance yourself from what you'd started? The question catches Richard off GG guard perceptive in a way that reminds him, yet again, that he's dealing with no ordinary 11-year-old. Both he admits after a moment. I was uncomfortable with what I'd done, but not uncomfortable enough to try to stop it, not until I saw the consequences firsthand. Amira nods, accepting this complex truth without comment. She rises from her seat, signaling the end of the meeting. Thank you for the information. Mr. Blackwell will make sure it reaches the appropriate authorities. As Richard gathers his things to leave, Amara adds, one more thing. You mentioned your nephew uses Dreamscape, the one with dyslexia. Richard looks up surprised. She remembered this detail from their brief conversation on the plane. Yes, it's been transformative for him. Tell him we're releasing an update next month with enhanced features for users with dyslexia. Beta testing showed a 40% improvement in reading comprehension and engagement. He might want to sign up for early access. With that, she turns and walks out, leaving Richard staring after her in stunned silence. Outside the conference room, Marcus catches up to his daughter. You didn't have to do that. Tell him about the update. Amara shrugs slightly. His nephew deserves the best tools available regardless of his uncle's actions. After a pause, she adds, besides, that's what Dreamscape is about, making education accessible to everyone, even when the world isn't fair. As they head back to their suite to prepare for tomorrow's rescheduled meeting with Suna Marcus. Marvels once again at his daughter's capacity for wisdom beyond her years through all the challenges of this extraordinary day. The prejudice, the false accusations, the corporate conspiracy Amara has maintained, not just her composure, but her fundamental commitment to the mission that drives her work, started as a confrontation over an airplane seat, has exposed layers of bias and corruption ion that might otherwise have remained hidden. And in doing so, it has also revealed something else. The remarkable resilience of a child who refuses to let others' limitations define her path forward. The next morning dawned, clear and bright over San Francisco Bay. The city's iconic skyline etched against a brilliant blue sky. In the Jenkins Hotel suite, preparations for the SUNTC meeting are underway with the focused efficiency that characterizes Dreamscape's operations. Amara reviews her presentation one final time, the familiar material grounding her after yesterday's turbulence. Zoe coordinates with their local team, ensuring all technical requirements for the demonstration are in place. Marcus handles calls from their Detroit headquarters, where news of the FBI investigation has inevitably reached key staff members. At precisely 9:15 a.m., a knock at the door announces the arrival of Diane Chen, accompanied by an unexpected visitor, Elizabeth Montgomery. "Hope you don't mind the surprise," Elizabeth says as she enters the authoritative presence they glimpsed briefly on the plane, now fully evident. "I thought we might benefit from a strategy session before the meeting." Marcus studies her with cautious interest. "That depends on what strategy you have in mind, Miss Montgomery. Your role in all this remains unclear." Elizabeth accepts this weariness with a gracious nod. "Fair enough. Let me clarify my position." She takes a seat in the living area, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp and focused. "For the past 8 months, I've been gathering evidence of TechCore's systematic targeting of minority-founded tech companies. What began as concerning patterns in investment decisions gradually revealed itself as a deliberate campaign to either acquire these companies at devalued prices or destroy them outright if acquisition failed. And your role in this campaign, Diane asks, pointedly observer. Initially, Elizabeth admits I was brought into relevant meetings because of my expertise in educational technology markets. What I heard disturbed me enough to start documenting everything, secretly recording meetings, saving emails, photographing documents. When I had sufficient evidence, I took it to a federal prosecutor I trust. Why not go public immediately, Zoe challenges, because I needed to ensure the evidence was unassailable. Elizabeth explains TechCore has powerful friends, excellent lawyers, and a remarkable ability to reframe narratives in their favor. If I moved too soon with too little proof, they would have buried the story, and me along with it. Amara, who has been listening quietly, finally speaks. "You knew they were targeting Dreamscape next." Elizabeth turns to her with a respectful nod. "Yes, your company became a priority target after refusing their acquisition offer last year. The success of your platform represents a particular threat to their educational technology portfolio, especially with NextGen's inferior products losing market share quarter after quarter. So you booked yourself on our flight deliberately," Marcus realizes. "To warn us to protect you if possible." Elizabeth corrects, or at least to witness and document whatever happened. "I didn't anticipate Mr. Blackwell's involvement. That was an unfortunate coincidence that accelerated their timeline." She pulls out her tablet, bringing up a document. "The good news is the FBI now has everything they need to pursue charges against TechCore's leadership. The bad news is they won't go down without a fight. They'll use every resource at their disposal to discredit you, your company, and your daughter." "Which brings us to today's meeting," Diane interjects. "SUNTC Ventures." "Exactly." Elizabeth's expression brightens. CUNTC represents a critical opportunity not just for Dreamscape's expansion plans, but as a public vote of confidence that could help insulate you from TechCore's inevitable counterattacks. Amara has been absorbing this information with her characteristic intensity. You joined SUNTC's board to ensure this meeting happened. Elizabeth smiles, genuinely impressed by the child's perception. "I've been consulting with SUNTC for years. When I left TechCore, they offered me a board position. The timing was fortuitous. And your recommendation to their investment committee, Marcus, asks still not entirely willing to trust this unexpected ally. Will be based entirely on the merits of Dreamscape's proposal," Elizabeth assures him. "Which, based on my analysis of your platform and growth metrics, should be strongly positive. But ultimately, Amara's presentation will need to convince the full board." All eyes turn to Amara, who meets their collective gaze with calm determination. "I'm ready." The SUNTC Ventures headquarters occupies 3 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. The Jenkins team arrives 30 minutes before their scheduled presentation, escorted to a waiting area with panoramic views of the bay. The opulence is subtle, but unmistakable. Original artwork on the walls, furnishings that whisper rather than shout their expense staff, who move with the practiced efficiency of those accustomed to serving the powerful. Amara takes it all in with outward composure. Though Marcus can sense her heightened awareness, the slight straightening of her posture, the careful modulation of her voice as she confirms technical requirements with the assistant who greets them. These small adjustments are familiar to him, now his daughter's way of armoring herself for environments where her youth and appearance might otherwise undermine her authority. At precisely 1100 a.m., they're escorted into UNTC's main boardroom where 12 people await them. The investment committee key advisors and Elizabeth Montgomery now seated among them as the newest board member. Her presence offers no special acknowledgement of their shared experience the previous day, maintaining the professional boundaries that the situation requires. What follows is a masterclass in poise and preparation. Amara presents Dreamscape's global expansion plan with a confident authority that has become her trademark in professional settings. She navigates complex questions about scalability, localization challenges, and ROI projections with precise, thoughtful responses. The technical demonstration of the platform's newest features, including the enhanced dyslexia support she'd mentioned to Richard Blackwell, draws appreciative murmurs from the committee. Throughout, Marcus watches the board members' reactions, noting the subtle shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. He's witnessed this transformation countless times. The initial skepticism that greets his 11-year-old daughter giving way to respect as her intelligence and vision become undeniable. After 90 minutes of presentation and questions, the committee chair, a veteran venture capitalist named James Chen, brings the session to a close. "Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. This has been most illuminating." His tone reveals nothing of the committee's leanings. "We'll need to deliberate, of course. Perhaps you and your team would like to enjoy some refreshments while we discuss." As they're escorted back to the waiting area, Zoe keeps her voice low. "That went well." "Better than well." "They were engaged," Marcus agrees, "especially with the adaptive learning modules for different cultural contexts." Amara says little mentally reviewing her performance, identifying points where she might have been clearer or more compelling. This critical self-assessment is part of her process, something Marcus has learned to respect rather than interrupt with premature reassurances. They wait for 45 minutes, a relatively short deliberation period that could signal either quick consensus or rapid rejection. When the assistant returns to escort them back to the boardroom, her smile offers no clues. James Chen rises as they enter. "Ms. Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins, Miss Washington, thank you for your patience." After careful consideration of Dreamscape's proposal, UNTC Ventures has reached a decision. He pauses a practiced moment of tension before continuing. "We would like to offer full funding for your global expansion initiative with an additional allocation for accelerated development of your accessibility features." The relief that washes through the room is palpable. Amara accepts the news with a gracious nod, maintaining her professional demeanor, even as Zoe squeezes her shoulder in silent celebration. "The committee was particularly impressed with your vision for bringing adaptive educational technology to underserved communities," Chen continues. "Elizabeth has also shared some context regarding recent challenges your company has faced. Let me assure you that Quantzi stands firmly behind Dreamscape, both financially and, if necessary, publicly." This last statement carries significant weight, a commitment of reputational support that could prove crucial in the days ahead as the TechCore investigation unfolds. As they work through the preliminary details of the agreement, Elizabeth catches Marcus's eye briefly. Her slight nod confirming what he's beginning to understand, that her advocacy behind the scenes likely helped secure not just the funding, but this promise of public backing. Later, as they exit the building into the bright San Francisco afternoon, the magnitude of what they've accomplished begins to sink in. Despite everything, the confrontation on the plane, the false accusations, the FBI questioning, they've secured the partnership necessary to bring Dreamscape's technology to children around the world who need it most. "We did it, Sparrow," Marcus says softly as they wait for their car. Amara looks up at him, her serious expression finally giving way to the smile of the 11-year-old beneath the CEO persona. "We did it despite everything they tried to do to stop us. Because of who you are," he tells her, fierce pride in his voice. "Because you never let anyone else define what you can achieve." As their car arrives to take them back to the hotel, Amara's phone chimes with a news alert. She reads it quickly, her expression growing solemn again. The FBI has just announced a formal investigation into TechCore Ventures for corporate espionage, securities fraud, and conspiracy. Good, Zoe says firmly. It's about time someone held them accountable. Amara is quiet for a moment, processing the implications. This is going to be big, isn't it? It's not just about us anymore. It never was. Marcus tells her gently. What happened on that plane? What's been happening to companies like ours for years? It's all part of something much larger. Systems that resist change. People who can't see beyond their own biases. Power structures that work to preserve themselves at any cost. But those systems can be changed. Amara responds with the unwavering belief that has driven her since she first conceived Dreamscape in her bedroom 2 years ago. That's what we're doing, isn't it? Building something better. As they drive through the city toward their hotel, the conversation turns to their return flight to Detroit the following day. A journey that will undoubtedly feel different after everything they've experienced. There will be challenges ahead as the TechCore investigation unfolds. As Dreamscape continues to expand, as Amara navigates the complex intersection of her extraordinary capabilities and the world's often limited expectations. But for now, they have achieved what they came for. And in doing so, they have struck a blow not just for their company, but for all those who refuse to accept that the path to success should be narrower for some than for others. What began as a dispute over an airplane seat has revealed truths about power prejudice and possibility that will continue to resonate long after Flight 1382 has faded from memory. And through it all, Amara Jenkins, brilliant, resilient, and undeterred, remains focused on the horizon, on the future she is determined to help create. As the sun sets over San Francisco Bay, casting long golden shadows across the cityscape, she turns her thoughts not to the obstacles that have been placed in her path, but to the millions of children around the world who will soon have access to the tools she's created. Tools that might help them overcome their own obstacles and realize their own extraordinary potential. In the end, that's what matters most. Not the seats we occupy on any given journey, but the doors we open for those who will follow. Epilogue. 6 months later, the auditorium at Detroit's Community Innovation Center buzzes with anticipation. Hundreds of educators, technology specialists, and students have gathered for the official launch of Dreamscape's Global Access Initiative, a program that will bring the platform to schools in 27 countries with specialized adaptations for different learning styles, cultural contexts, and accessibility needs. Behind the stage, Amara adjusts her blazer a new one necessary as she's grown an inch since the events in San Francisco. At 12 now, she stands at the threshold of adolescence, her face maturing though still unmistakably young. Beside her, Marcus reviews the program schedule, while Zoe coordinates with the technical team, ensuring the demonstration will run smoothly. Nervous, Marcus asks, recognizing the familiar signs, the slight bouncing on her toes, the repeated tucking of hair behind her ears. A little. Amara admits it's a big room full of people who believe in what you've built. He reminds her, and after everything that's happened this year, that means something. Indeed, the past 6 months have been transformative for Dreamscape and the broader tech industry. The FBI investigation into TechCore Ventures has expanded to include multiple charges of corporate espionage, resulting in the indictment of several senior executives. Richard Blackwell, making good on his promise to cooperate fully with authorities, provided testimony that helped secure these indictments. Though he too faces charges for his role in the false security alert, Elizabeth Montgomery has emerged as a powerful advocate for ethical business practices and diversity in tech leadership. Her whistleblower status giving her a platform to address long-standing issues of bias and exclusion in the industry. Her regular appearances before congressional committees and industry forums have kept the conversation about these issues in the public consciousness. As for Amara and Dreamscape, the SUNTC partnership has propelled the company to new heights, with user numbers doubling and implementation in school districts across the country. More significantly, the publicity surrounding the attempted sabotage of a black-owned educational technology company sparked important conversations about representation and opportunity in tech entrepreneurship. 2 minutes, the stage manager calls, breaking into Amara's thoughts. She takes a deep breath, centering herself in the moment ready. As she steps onto the stage, the audience erupts in applause. Teachers who have seen their students thrive using her platform. Parents grateful for tools that have helped their children overcome learning challenges. Industry peers who recognize the innovation Dreamscape represents. But perhaps most meaningful are the rows of children near the front. Students from local schools, many from backgrounds similar to Amara's own, looking up at her with expressions of undisguised admiration and possibility. "Thank you." She begins, her voice clear and confident in the microphone. 6 months ago, Dreamscape faced a crisis that threatened everything we've built. What began as a dispute over an airplane seat exposed a larger pattern of bias and obstruction that has affected many innovative companies founded by people from underrepresented groups in tech. She pauses, surveying the attentive faces before her. But that crisis also revealed something else: the strength of our community, the importance of our mission, and the power of standing firm in the face of injustice. The screen behind her illuminates with images of classrooms around the world. Children in rural India, Mexico, Kenya, and dozens of other locations where Dreamscape's technology has been piloted over the past months. Today, we launch a program that will bring adaptive learning tools to millions of students globally, regardless of geography, economic status, or learning differences. Because we believe that access to quality education isn't a privilege for the few, it's a right for everyone. As Amara continues her presentation detailing the technical innovations and implementation strategies that will make this vision a reality, Marcus watches from the wings with quiet pride. The journey from that tense moment on Flight 1382 to this triumphant launch has been challenging. But it has also affirmed what he's always believed about his remarkable daughter: that her greatest strength lies not just in her brilliant mind, but in her unwavering conviction that technology should serve humanity's highest aspirations. In the audience, unnoticed among the hundreds of attendees, Elizabeth Montgomery listens intently, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Beside her sits an unexpected companion, Richard Blackwell, attending Edom Amara's personal invitation as part of his ongoing effort to make amends and educate himself. His expression is contemplative, a man still reckoning with his own biases, but committed to the difficult work of change. As the presentation concludes and Amara invites questions from the audience, a young girl of about 9 raises her hand. "I want to make software like you when I grow up," she says, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "But people tell me I'm too young to understand coding. What should I tell them?" Amara smiles, recognizing in this child's question echoes of her own early experiences. Tell them that age is just a number, not a measure of what you can create or understand. Tell them that the most important qualification for building something new isn't how old you are. It's how clearly you can see what needs to exist in the world. She pauses, then adds with a touch of the quiet confidence that has carried her through challenges far greater than any 12-year-old should have to face. And then show them what you can do, because ultimately, that's what changes minds. Not arguing with those who doubt you, but proving through your work that they were wrong to doubt in the first place. As applause fills the auditorium once more, the camera pulls back metaphorically to reveal the scene in its entirety. A young innovator sharing her vision. An audience inspired by possibility. A father watching with pride. Former adversaries transformed by reflection and accountability. All connected by a series of events that began with a disputed airplane seat, but expanded to encompass fundamental questions about who deserves a place at the table in our shared technological future. For Amara Jenkins, that future stretches bright before her, not without challenges certainly, but rich with purpose and possibility. The seat she occupies now at the forefront of educational technology innovation was not given to her by anyone's permission or condescension. She earned it through brilliant persistence and an unwavering belief that the tools we create should serve all of humanity, not just those who have traditionally held power. And in that understanding lies perhaps the most important lesson of this remarkable journey. That true innovation comes not from preserving existing systems, but from expanding them to include voices, perspectives, and talents previously excluded. That the future belongs not to those who guard their privileges most jealously, but to those who imagine most boldly what might be possible if we all had the opportunity to contribute our unique gifts. As the event transitions to a demonstration of Dreamscape's newest features, Amara steps from the spotlight, momentarily rejoining her father in the wings. Their eyes meet in shared recognition of how far they've come, and how much further they still intend to go. "Good job, Sparrow," Marcus says softly. Amara's smile part, CEO part 12-year-old. Holy herself illuminates her face. "We're just getting started," she replies. And in those simple words lies the promise of everything yet to come. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more content like this. Where were you watching from? Let me know in the comments below.